If you're setting out to start a nonprofit, it's true that these days AI might be able to give you some basic information about that, but it can never really help you understand some of the realities that you might face along the way. So here I am, Amber, to share some of them based on my own experiences as an imperfect and a feeling human being. Starting a nonprofit can be a deeply personal journey. Just like any entrepreneurial venture, you can pour your heart into something that might not always work out, or that might work out better than your wildest dreams. So this one's a little different from my more educational content on this channel, but I wanted to make this video because I think sometimes what we need is a little solidarity, a little validation, and maybe even a little encouragement. I'm going to share about 6 lessons learned that I hope will help you feel a little seen if starting a nonprofit is the journey that you are on too. Now, I'm going to start with one that has a much bigger impact on your life than you might realize. I think one of the first things that happened for me that I didn't realize until at least a few years in was just how tied up my personal identity would become with the nonprofit that I started. When you truly believe in a cause and most of your time in the day is taken up by working on furthering your mission, you find that people start treating you and your organization as one and the same. Your name becomes associated with the organization's name in your community and to the people in your circles. Now, for me, after a few years of being out in public, doing speaking and outreach and trying to grow my organization's supporter base, people who didn't know me would see me at an event and say, "Oh, you're that nonprofit girl." Like they would immediately associate me with my organization rather than as an independent, multifaceted person. And at first, if I'm being honest, it was kind of exciting. I felt like it meant that I was doing a good job of getting the word out about our work. But over time, it started to feel as if that was all I was to people, that I didn't have other interests outside of the organization, like art or music or writing. I became a sort of one-dimensional caricature of my organization, almost like a symbol of my cause. And on the one hand, that can help your organization. As a founder or executive director, it's true that you become both a symbolic and tactical leader for your mission. But on the other hand, this can have some not great consequences. For one, when your personal identity is tied to the organization, then if the organization takes a hit, for example, losing some funding or having a project fail, etc., you can feel like it's a personal failure and take it really hard. If a donor or sponsor rejects your funding request, a part of you can feel like they're rejecting you personally, even though that's rarely the case. And another consequence can be that the organization's needs crowd out the rest of your whole identity. I love to paint and draw, but I was so consumed by my work that there were stretches of time I didn't do any artwork for years. It also messes with your head because you start to wonder if people really know the complete you outside of your organization. You wonder who you would be or what you would do if the organization ever went away. And I can tell you, I found out because as I've shared on this channel before, I did end up leaving my organization about a year, almost 2 years now. And I had to answer that question, who even am I now? Now, fortunately, this amazing community here on YouTube and those of you who have worked with me more closely have helped me answer that. But looking back, I realized that much of the sort of dilution of my full identity was my own fault. In the early days of starting a nonprofit especially, I was so concerned with making it successful that I didn't set many boundaries. I would work at all hours, and I see that it was a choice to put my artwork on the back burner. I joked in a recent video that I once went about a 6-year stretch without a real vacation. And maybe at the time I enjoyed how people looked at me and said, "Wow, you're such a hard worker." But today I see that I might have even been a better or stronger leader and founder if I'd fought harder to hold on to the rest of myself. So that's my advice to you, whether you're just getting started or already in the thick of it. Set boundaries, create some rules that protect your time and self, learn how to detach your identity from the organizations, because sometimes things will happen with the organization that you really didn't have much control over. And it's important that your mental health stay intact, even if that happens. Which kind of brings me to my next reality or lesson learned. The imposter syndrome is real. And I think that this is true of anyone starting anything or any kind of entrepreneur. And make no mistake, starting a nonprofit makes you an entrepreneur. But basically, you're going to question yourself a lot when you start a nonprofit, especially as you start putting yourself out there. You're going to meet others in your community doing nonprofit work, and you're going to see how far along they seem, or how nice their website looks, or how many people are attending their events. And you're going to think, wow, look at them. I don't have any of that. I really suck at this. And then you're going to have moments where you're trying to explain your mission to people and they look at you like you have 3 heads. Or you're going to go completely mess up an important presentation and go sit in your car in the parking lot and cry for a while. And if that one sounds a bit specific, it's because I really did that, probably more than a few times. You are going to question your organization's existence, your skills and intelligence, and whether or not you have what it takes. But if you're feeling this way, I'm hoping that what helped me can help you. And it's this not so secret. Literally nobody else knows what they are doing either. Now, I know you've probably heard this before, it's a little cliche at this point, but seriously, it is true. Founders who are now running huge nonprofits helping thousands of people every year, every single one of them was clueless at some point. They messed stuff up and failed. They got told no, probably by hundreds of people, yet they still figured it out. So I think my advice to you here on this one is, don't look at this process of starting and growing a nonprofit as something that's just going to be successful one day when you wake up. Think of it as iterative and experimental, like a science experiment. Your top priority in the first year or 3 years should be try and test a bunch of stuff and see what works well, then do more of that. I guarantee if you approach it like that and you learn to take failure as a passing phase, you are going to succeed. It is inevitable. I think that is actually a really good segue into my next thought here, and that is that the real work that starting and growing a successful nonprofit, and by that I mean one that helps a lot of people, is financially sustainable, and well-loved and respected in your community, it's often boring and takes a long time. Now, I know because I was personally guilty of this in the beginning too. A lot of people think of starting a nonprofit and they romanticize it. They think of the fun or deeply meaningful moments where they're directly serving and connecting to people. They think of donations or grants effortlessly pouring in because who wouldn't want to support your amazing mission? They think of the satisfaction they'll feel at the end of the day knowing that their efforts made a difference. And all of those things happen and are true. But just like photos of your favorite influencers on Instagram, those are just snapshots of the best moments. What you don't see are the hours and days and months of quiet behind the scenes work that has to go in to setting up those moments, because we often see these best moments from causes we love on social media, and we don't realize that sometimes being able to get to the point in those images took years of preparation and refining your strategy of building infrastructure and operations and relationships with supporters. For example, I see a lot of questions from aspiring nonprofit founders online about how they can get a grant or a big donation quickly for their cause. But I could never tell you in good faith that you're going to get funding right away. It would be dishonest. I went a couple of years with our organization scraping by on small donations before I finally figured out some stuff and was able to access some bigger opportunities. The truth is there are a lot of factors that influence your chances of getting grant support or donations, some within your control and some outside of your control. Everything from what issue you are tackling to your reputation in your community to how well you can communicate your goals. And I talk a lot about those in my other videos, so be sure to check those out too. But anyway, there are 2 pieces of advice that I can give you on this one based on my own experiences. The first is that you need to be prepared for the long haul here. Mentally prepare yourself, get ready to be patient, and like I was saying before, be able to let failures roll off of you and not slow you down. And the second piece of advice, though, is about how to set yourself up for success so you can cut down on some of the time that it takes for you to build momentum. One of the best things you can do in the beginning stages of starting a nonprofit is talk to as many people as you can to gather information about the issues that you're tackling, who is supporting that issue in your area, and who else you should meet to form a relationship. The information that you're going to get and the connections that you're going to build by doing this are going to give you a huge leg up as you build. Which brings me to another reality that I experienced. Successfully starting and growing a nonprofit can be more dependent on who you know than you realize. Now, I have always hated the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know, because it felt like a cop-out, like what, you can only succeed if you know fancy people. I do not like that at all. Until I realized something. Even if you are starting with basically no connections like I did, you can still form the right connections with some thoughtful networking and enough time. Now, when I was first starting out, I was a college student who didn't know much of anyone outside of my immediate friend circle. I did not come from money, and I did not have connections with wealth or influence who might have been able to help me out. But what I did have was a lot of curiosity. So what I did was just started meeting with anybody I thought might be able to help me understand any aspect of what I was trying to do with my organization. I'd have coffee with one person, ask them questions, and really get to know their background. And then I would ask, like I said, who should I meet who might be interested in the same issue? And over time, I realized just how many people I'd gotten to know from different backgrounds and how building these relationships with so many people led them to trust me, to see me as credible, and then become more likely to donate to my organization or share it with their friends in the future. The reality is that to get support for your mission, you need to get and stay visible and have strong relationships and a strong reputation in your community. People don't fund what they can't see, and they don't fund what they don't trust. So my advice here on this one is to really get yourself comfortable putting yourself out there, talking to as many people as possible, and getting your organization in the spotlight. And if this isn't something that you've had much experience with before, I'm here to tell you that if you're willing, this is absolutely a skill you can train yourself on. You remember how I said I flubbed a presentation and cried in my car, right? Well, I decided I wanted to get better at speaking and being out there. And so I worked on it and I practiced. And today I travel around the country speaking publicly for a variety of groups. Nobody starts a nonprofit being great at all the things. But the most successful founders I've met learn and grow over time with the help of others in their circle and community. Now, the next thing I want to share is something I never could have anticipated getting started, and it relates to how the public thinks about and views nonprofits. The reality that I've learned is that most people think they understand nonprofits, but they don't. This organization, Candid, recently shared this insightful article about this. They said that only about 5% of people they surveyed thought they'd used nonprofit services in the past year. But the reality is the number could be as high as 81%. That's because people don't understand what nonprofits are and which organizations are nonprofits. If you've adopted a pet, used a credit union for your bank, visited a well-maintained hiking trail or museum, bought Girl Scout cookies, taken art or music classes, had a child in a youth sports league, did a litter pickup with a community club, or any number of other examples, you've interacted with a nonprofit. Okay, so how does this impact you? Well, for one, if you are a nonprofit founder, that might mean people, maybe even your own friends or family, are not really understanding what you're doing or how it works. For example, a lot of people don't understand that nonprofits can and often do have paid staff running the organization. Even though nonprofits make up about 10% of the entire adult workforce in the United States, it's the third largest industry in the nation. Even years after I'd been made the paid full-time executive director of the nonprofit I'd started, I'd have people ask if I got paid for my job. Dude, yes. Nonprofits need skilled, trained staff to continuously oversee services and operations just like small businesses do. But there's another side to this too, and this is one that I've seen crop up recently. Some people have negative perceptions of nonprofits in general. Like they believe that all nonprofits, no matter how good or effective they may be, are scams. But here's what I think about this for real. Nonprofits are not without issues. There's a lot of justifiable dialogue right now in the nonprofit world about some of the flaws with the structure and model of nonprofits. And I'm among those who will tell you that we need some changes to the nonprofit structure for it to be truly fair and effective and serve communities better. But here's how I see this in the meantime. Nonprofits, just like businesses or government, are made up of human beings, and human beings have flaws. Nonprofits should definitely be held to high moral and ethical standards, but that doesn't mean that when one organization has a scandal or makes a mistake, that all nonprofits are bad. The vast majority of nonprofit founders and leaders I've met have been genuinely trying to do their best and serve people on shoestring budgets. So here's my advice to you to prepare for some of these perceptions and conversations. Lean into being humble and transparent, being open about how your organization works and why, and how you listen to the people you serve, challenges, mistakes, how funds are spent, and what processes you have in place to continuously improve will go a long, long way for people. And now we're at the sixth thing that I wanted to share today, and it's a doozy. And that is that most likely one day you'll have to let go of the organization. But here's the interesting part about that. Sometimes that will be hard, but sometimes that will be easy. By the time that I left my role at my organization, I was, if I'm being honest, ready. I had experienced some burnout, but also I was realizing that I wanted to see how else I could go help people and make an impact. I was ready to try something new, and I knew that I was leaving the organization in good hands. And I hear from a lot of founders that they plan to work for their organizations until they die. And maybe a few founders do that, but in my observation, most don't. Maybe, like I did, they chose to leave and pursue other dreams, or maybe their board of directors fired them, because that's a thing that can happen in nonprofits too. But either way, you should prepare yourself for the eventuality that the organization won't be a part of your work and life anymore. And maybe that's okay. After I left my organization, as I alluded before, I went through a period of trying to figure out who am I now? But I did one thing that I think really helped me figure it out. I asked myself, what's my mission? Not my organization's, but mine personally. And I realized that my own personal mission is to help people figure out their path to making a difference in the world and help them build the skills to do that well. And I realized that's what I'm already trying to do here on YouTube. And that personal mission was also at the core of the first organization that I started. It was a through line throughout my life. When you know your personal mission, you can do work in a variety of organizations or roles, as long as you pick roles that further that personal mission. You carry that mission with you, even if one organization or project goes away. Now, before we close out here today, I do want to take a minute to thank the sponsor of this video, because I would not be able to do this work without their support. Starting and growing a nonprofit can feel overwhelming, but Click and Pledge, our sponsor, makes it easy for nonprofits to start strong and scale their fundraising with confidence and empower their volunteers and board members and teams to help raise money too. With Click and Pledge, you'll get professional grade fundraising tools for super affordable startup level costs from day one. They've got customizable donation forms that you can plug right into your website. And these forms are going to be the foundation of your online fundraising strategy. But Click and Pledge also has a number of other tools included in their affordable flat monthly costs that you can use as your nonprofit is growing and building. They've got in-person and peer-to-peer fundraising features, video fundraising with embedded donation links right in the videos, text-to-give tools, donor management tools, Salesforce, and other integrations, all included with no contracts or surprise add-on fees. Now, unlike some platforms that increase your fees as you grow, Click and Pledge pricing stays the same whether you have 10 donors or 10,000 donors. So you can use the QR code and link in the description below to check out Click and Pledge. You can book a demo and you can get your first $25 monthly fee waived. I truly hope that, if nothing else, this video has helped you feel seen a little bit, maybe. There was nothing special about me when I started a nonprofit other than being super determined, but I have the feeling that a lot of you are determined too. So if I could do it, there's really no reason that you can't. And I hope these videos that I make here on this channel help you even a little bit. If you want more support as you're starting or building your efforts, I share additional strategies and resources every week in my free newsletter for nonprofit leaders and changemakers. And I've got that link below the video, and it's also my website, changemakercafe.com. And in the next video, I'm going to talk through nonprofit board and staff roles and how you can create really important clarity to avoid confusion and conflict around those roles. It's something that keeps a lot of organizations from making progress, so you don't want to miss that one. I'm Amber Melanie Smith, and I'll see you next week. Bye.